Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the last version of Digital Classicist Seminar in Berlin this year. I'm happy to welcome our talkers for today, Marion Lamé from Pisa and Federico Ponchio from Pisa. And they're going to talk about their project called Across the Pond, an experiment in ancient history teaching and digital epigraphical research. And I'm really keen on hearing what you have to say to us.
Thank you very much. So this is a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the organizer. We are going to show you the result of a 2 years work with the Mount Allison University, Professor Bruce Robertson, the Archeological Museum in Zagreb with Ivan Radman, the CNRS of Pisa with Federico Ponchio, and the Laboratorio di Cultura Digitale of the University of Pisa. Everything starts with searching of gathering people around what we called a digital autoptic process. This means that we wanted people to be able to discuss about how they see some inscriptions and how they could help each other to decipher these inscriptions. We've got a specific corpus that is a set of lead tags at the old town of Sisha in Pannonia, edited by Ivan Radman. The Sisha chronology for these lead tags is going from the 1st century after Christ to the 3rd century after Christ, and there are small commercial tags that were attached to clothes to be dyed, okay, with colors. There looks like this. They are more or less the size of stamps. They are quite difficult to read on traditional pictures. Usually the editor Ivan needs to produce a first level of interpretation that is a drawing, an archaeological drawings. There could be also damage like this one that has the face of a kind of shark. This one is, if you can read it, I think it's a little bit, oh yes, these are names, but if you can make a try, you can read on the top here, Lodikem, that is a blanket. But if you go back, you can make a try to read the name Aeli, with the A with two straight bar and an L, then I. I know that you can't read it, just to make it hard, okay? Thanks to the drawings, of course, you can try to understand a bit, then learn the alphabet and the shape of the letters. So you can say, oh yes, I can read Lodikem and even the color of the blanket and maybe the name of the client and the price he or she paid for this blanket. Unfortunately, there is all the editorial academic work of Ivan that gives you some translation, some transcription, because otherwise on this one, for instance, I think it's totally impossible to read it without his help. These lead tags are full also of abbreviations. They are like small SMS or some small tweets. Okay, so L can it's usually about Lana, but you got like several abbreviations for it, and the same thing for every other kind of clothes or services. What we tried to build was, and we will go back on this aspect later, was to help students and academics to build relationships between these kind of writings and the textual that comes from those writings. And we are also interested by some economic statistics. Not all of them are bearing some price. Some price are also doubtful sometimes. And they are going in average between 1 denier and 5 denier. I'm sorry, I don't know the word in English, if someone knows it, for denier. No. Then we looked for how to represent digitally this corpus. Ivan wrote a thesis, wrote a book, a paper book. So we looked what was all around from digital point of view for similar objects like amphora stamps or coins. Like by similar object we mean like small information, small commercial information, small object with abbreviation or short information. So there are, like for instance, amphora stamps that are usually presented in databases where you've got traditional pictures and some metadata. And you've got another way that are more visualization tools. This one is a RTE project that was set up by the ISTI, where they use the RTI technology to facilitate the visualization of coins. Just to give you an idea of the quantity of objects that could be digitized this way, the Archeological Museum in Zagreb has more than 200,000 coins. So it becomes a large amount of material. So you've got or the solution of the database or the solution of the visualization. And we choose to try to build some relationships between those two ways of representing the information. And the first step was to work on on organizing the information of the shape of the letters. So this is a very first organization of the shape we met. We looked for solutions to make the autopsy, a digital autopsy of the lead tag, and we choose the RTI. And now I am going to leave my colleague presenting you this part of the digital autopsy process, that is the visualization aspect of the tag, before coming back to the writings and the exercise we asked to students.
Okay. One way typical for inscription is to use grazing lights to enhance the marks on the object. And usually when we take a picture, we the photographer tries to find the optimal light to illuminate the object. The main problem is that, especially for this kind of objects, there might not be one optimal direction of the light, and the photographer might not be the right person to do the job, because is not involved in the description. Maybe it decides that certain details are important and want to emphasize them, and maybe it emphasizes the wrong detail. So it would be nice to have a larger connection of light direction, for instance, every light direction possible, so that the illumination decision can be made when someone is actually doing the transcription of the label. Of course, it's not very practical to have 100 of images for every object, because we have a lot of objects, and also it's not very convenient to browse between them, because it's a large number of data. It's a large amount of data, as you need to organize it in some way. So one technology that helps doing this job is the RTI. I don't know how many are familiar with this. Basically, the idea is that we take a lot of pictures of from the same point of view, so it's a 2D technology, it's not 3D. But with some enhancement, we change the light, we record the appearance of the object with a lot of different lighting conditions. Here is the mechanism we built in Pisa, which is basically a camera, a lot of LEDs, and the computer to control it, so it's quite easy to set up. It's not a very complicated machine. And the idea is to model the appearance of the object, capturing, in our case, three fundamental aspects. One is the color of the object, the other one is the specularity, how it reflects the light, and the third one is locally the orientation of the surface. Because, for example, a rough surface with a lot of different orientation will act differently when we change the light than a smooth surface or something like that. So we have a model of the object which allows us to encode in a more compact way the appearance of the object, and so that we can mimic on our screen what we do on reality when we have a LED tag and we want to tilt it under different light condition to show the details we are interested in. So we can do it on the screen virtually. One other, no, sorry, I forgot. Okay. Additionally, we can enhance the information, doing something that is not possible with our eyes, applying filters to the image, combining this aspect in different ways to enhance the writing. You will see later how bad the image is and how filters can make it much more readable. Okay. One other thing that changed recently is that we are able to apply this technology over the web. This is mainly due to the availability of WebGL, which is a technology that allows to have basically graphic acceleration on common browser. So everybody nowadays has this capability in his browser. So this technique can be really used by everyone. There is no barrier to access. And another thing is a bit older, the technology used by the mapping system like Google Maps or so, display very large images in a progressive manner and showing, minimizing the amount of data that need to be transferred from the server to the client. These two technologies allows such a system to be available everywhere. I make a small example here, if I can find the tag. Sorry. Okay, this is the one of the labels, and you can see I can change the light. I can zoom quite a lot. Remember, these tags are very small, are like 2 centimeters by 3. So without magnification, they are really difficult to read.
We've got fake tags that are just...
And you may be able to pick, to enhance one mark or another to try to understand what really is going on. And this is just a common web page. So also the processing is completely automatic. There is not much manpower involved in the process. Everything is more or less waiting time for the computer to collect the images and produce the final data set stored in the database. So we were able to digitize 40, 50 labels in a very small amount of time, like a week or so. And just because you need to streamline the process, it can be even faster. It can be parallelized, having 2 DOMs. And so it's very cost-effective techniques also for low-budget projects.
So the visualization is a part of the digital autoptic process, but we needed also to think on how annotate what each person wanted to annotate on the digital artifact. So I'm going to make a small break on how to annotate some aspect of the digital artifact. This was a work of 3-4 years ago that I made with the programmer Francisco Soler at the University of Granada in Spain. And he was working on a digital software who was able to annotate some 3D objects. And I had the great chance to work with him, and I asked him to annotate some writings, and it requires us a month of work. And this is a cheapo. I don't know how to say that in English. Where there was a very clear writing on the top and some kind of, we don't know exactly why it was written so badly. It is stored at Pisa. And we were able to precisely on the 3D model draw the letter. And for instance, if I was asking, I want to see all the air or all the C letters, and if I want to precise the state of the letter, if it's ambiguous or not, he made it possible in his software. But it was also possible to annotate some textual information that was not written information, like lines. And of course, it was initially sought to annotate some non-textual and non-writing information. This is for 3D aspect. Here we annotated, for instance, the image N. So I asked something similar to Federico Ponchio to work on the RTI and on the photograms of the RTIs in order to allow the users of the project to annotate the writings, so to make a connection between the writing systems of the inscription and the textual system of the inscription. This is our helped markout, because in this specific case we give to the user the transcription that the first editor, Ivan Radman, shows for this LED tablet. And as you see in red, the Unicode is associated to some colors. So when this tool becomes online, it allows to share and to discuss distantly some interpretation. And this is what we tried to put into the hands of students who cannot have an access to primary sources because they are distant from the artifact. Want to explain it?
The idea was to create a very humble tool, something that was very easy to use, not difficult to set up, and could be enhanced and configured. Here you see, we made this version of the tool. We will see the final, the prototype, the real prototype. This was for the students, because recognizing the letter is very difficult already, even if you already know what they are. So we have the letter on the left, the drawing for the real beginners, and then they had to trace the mark on the object. But the idea of the tool is to try to render as easy as possible to draw the shape, which is a bit of a problem with the mouse. And there are basically two line of schools. Mark something using a rectangle or drawing like paint with pixels. We tried something using vectors. The idea is that first you draw something on the screen that represents the shape, and then you adjust and fine-tune the location, which is more easy to do with the mouse than retrace until you get the shape perfectly right. And this is the first part, tracing the marks. Then there is the second part, which is the linking the shape to the text. For example, here we allow the user to have a table of all the possible letters and to pick the correct shape, also uncertain letters or undecided letters. Then we added a few things, like, for example, the ability to have different layers, because on the labels often there are different layers that will be reused. And so you can have an above layer, a below layer. Then another thing we added is the possibility to change the light. This is not RTI software, because it's quite a challenge to get the two technology compatible. WebGL doesn't play nice with Canvas and other technology that we used, but it's planned to insert the RTI technology directly into the tool, so that you can change the light a bit more interactively than this. So, okay, so I make a small example here so that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this.
Maybe we are going to ask you to help us, because this one is very hard.
No, this one is too hard.
No, we are going to. You've got the tables of shapes in your hands. Have you? So
Maybe let's change the direction of the light.
If somebody wants to tell us a couple of letters, if you make a try.
I don't know, for example, this one, second line. I'm terrible at drawing with the mouse, so I need this help. I think I can read something like this, which is an E. Something like this one. Okay. Then this one may be a G. Something like this, and then G. Which one? This one maybe. Okay.
On the
Yes.
first line. An X on the first line.
This one. I can show you the RTI maybe of this object, so that you can.
So remember, normally these all the let tags are commercial, but this is a trap. It's not a commercial let tag.
I'm sorry. This one is an it's an X.
I think so.
It's not easy, huh?
Ah,
Move the light. Would you please?
Yes.
Is the first one an S?
The first one, this one.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, let's look.
Yeah, it looks a bit like an S.
If I trace it like this, okay, a bit better. I can make it bigger. If you go to look what it could be, it could also be something like an F. See, maybe this line is real. The S, if you look at the S, either are more shaped like this, or they are very vertical, something like
That is a snake.
so. And in fact, this one is, for consensus of the researcher, an F. Something like this. Okay. This one, we can switch to the RTI. You see why I want to integrate the RTI in the software, because for problematic labels, they would be very helpful.
But there is a debate between us, because I do agree that there are the photograms only, because I do agree that it is important for the researcher or the students to have access to the raw data before they are processed by the RTI. So we will leave also the photograms accessible.
This one looks like a shape like this. Could be a C, maybe. But this one is really strange, because the C usually it's stopped at the middle. It's not got over. You see here it goes over like this. So actually
the last line is easier. Just go down. The last line is really easier. Because
right. No.
there is a T here.
Here is a T.
And there is an A.
Two I and A.
An S.
This is an S. A. Okay, you see what sort of challenge this
Okay,
poses.
this one is a very hard one, and Ivan Radman is looking for people to help him to decipher it. Okay, so don't be ashamed. And also because it's a very nice tag. It is a love message that says, "I really would like to be your friend," more or less. Okay, so there is no price. There is no cloth, there is no color, there is no weight, there is a personal message.
Okay, one other thing that you can do about the technical aspect of this tool. The idea is we have an SVG, which is, everybody knows what SVG is. It's a vector file format. where the letters are stored with their metadata, and it weighs very little, it's like 1K, and can be shared and distributed online, stored on the web server, visualized everywhere. It's a very flexible format, and it's very simple also to extract the information out of it. We could make it compatible with TEI, for example, for compatibility with other projects. So it's a very flexible format. I can show easily what the interpretation of our shape is, and people could share their interpretation quite easily, like this. So that's what we ask the student to do, basically. To this tool, we would like to add RTI support, the ability to integrate different interpretation of the same symbol within this one single MarkOut, and to add the customization so that other people could use it, integrate them within their system, connecting with the database, using different alphabets and stuff like this. This is a prototype, but it could be. Another nice thing of this approach is that it's easy to extract the shape of the mark or of the letters. It's very easy because the user is doing basically this for you, and it's a vector format, which is much easier to treat than raster format for analysis and stuff. So we could link this tool to I used sign, but letter analysis to make statistics and other stuff basically automatically.
So that was quite challenging for students. Obviously, they did not face the one we showed you. We gave them some easier let tags to work with. But the question was the question was, can let's undergraduates contribute to this research? And the answer is yes. We made 4 steps for them. The first one was a reading one, a basic academic reading. We gave them the thesis of Ivan and a couple of articles to introduce them to the let tags of C#. But then we asked them to work on the writings. This means we ask them to have a basic picture, the drawings, and the transcriptions of Ivan, and to associate by cutting out the letters, the shape of the glyph to some letters. It's not so easy because, for instance, as you see here, this glyph, this letter, is a P, but here it is a P, but it could be also easily confused with the R. Okay, they have this kind of challenges to face. So they worked for a while with the writings in order to get used to the different shapes, and then they had the table that you had to get used also to strong ambiguities like the 2 vertical bars that could be A, 2, H, or also a damaged letter. They worked decently, so this is a picture they took of their working with me while I was in Pisa. And once they felt confident with the shapes of the letters, it was quite quick. 2-3 times. We let them play with the MarkOut in order to make them to ask them to make the connection between the writing systems and the textual system. And we call this third step test and test adapt. This one is largely more easier. It is the ID tasty one I showed you at the beginning with the blanket. So here they associated some letters with the transcription we gave them. And they were quite, and this was I think the best part of it, they were enthusiasm. They really enjoyed the practice. This is a quote that Bruce Robertson just sent us, and he wanted to precise that it's come from a D student, so somebody who has some difficulty to get inside his academic courses. And sharing the the artifact with people, in this case students, but it could be also a public in a museum, is also giving an access to a certain kind of pleasure. And I think this enthusiasm, this enjoying cultural heritage is an important part of the teaching that is not the digital part. And that the book, in the case of lead tags, for instance, maybe share less easily. The easy part is that the computational equipment, every student has it. The hard part, but I don't think it's so hard, was multilingualism, because the academic literature was almost in French or Croatian, and there are Anglophone students, but some of them are bilingual, French and Anglophone. They took a bit to take used to image manipulation, and we needed also to train them to the text editing, the academic text editing, like critical sign, listing the diacritical sign. And we use a DigiCraft model that they applied at Laboratorio di Cultura Digitale in Pisa with the Professoressa Salvatori. That is, we asked the students to help them quite intensively. We asked that to the student of Digital Humanities in Pisa in order to ask them to help the student in Canada at the beginning to get used to the digital tools. But when we redo the experiment recently with a French student of l'École des Chartes, whose name is Claire Leborgne, and another student in Canada whose name is Tanisha Crandall. Claire Leborgne is a student of paleography, an epigrapher, and Tanisha is a student in history. And the two girls helped each other to work on the tag, one from Paris and one from Canada, and I was in Pisa. The fourth step that is in progress is a publishing exercise. Thanks to the interactive diplomatic reconstitution that Federico showed you, the student is able to show what his or her interpretation is. We put it on my blog, who's got an ISSN, and we asked two professors and experts to comment their small publication in order to help them to improve it. And once it will be satisfied, we will open it to the public. I ignore totally how to go on my blog. It's open, isn't it? It is here? Oh yeah, this is, okay. So this is Tanisha's work. She made a presentation of a tag. She made a diplomatic reconstitution with, I suppose, here? Yes. Oh yes, that was also a tricky one because we did not tell them that it was not in the right side, in the right direction. So they had to understand how to look at it. So this is a proposal of diplomatic reconstitution of the lead tag. And you can follow her transcription and agree with her or not, and maybe send her another SVG file with this kind of information. And let's go have a look. Yes, I think it's okay. And in this way, we allow them to bring some kind of evidence inside their publication, and this kind of evidence, I think, is able to be expressed only in digital. It's not a diplomatic transcription, a traditional one. It's neither a critical transcription, that they are doing both at the end, but it is what is in between. How the epigrapher just imagine how was the inscription at one moment. I would like to spend the very last minutes on how we get back, how we arrived to this kind of tool, how we decide to make this diplomatic reconstitution, yes, of the writings. It asks to go back on what an inscription is, and for that it is necessary to go back quite far in humanities literature before dialoguing with the computer scientist. I'm going to take very quickly the example of the Res Gestae Livia Augusti because that's easy to understand with this inscription and everybody knows it. But it's a question also of making the meeting between philology, that is a critical aspect of the text, and the historical editing of the document that should be an epigraphic edition. I suppose that everybody has an idea of what are the issues about the Res Gestae Livia Augusti, but there are several testimony and very few differences between the stones, but they're also very damaged. So it is quite rare to have a diplomatic edition, a diplomatic transcription of each stone. And what happens often also when it comes to diplomatic transcription, if I make it very, very quickly, in the 400 years of this inscription, is that the very last diplomatic transcription of 2007, that is John Shedd, is based on what people were able to see before, like months. And it means that the diplomatic transcription of John Shedd, and John Shedd called it a diplomatic edition, contains information that are not visible anymore on the stone. So it's, in a way, it's not a pure diplomatic transcription. And I think that this situation that is easy to understand for the Res Gestae is useful also for any kind of inscriptions. This is how we reach the idea of looking for a diplomatic reconstitution in the MarkOut. That is, the MarkOut contains information that the epigrapher thinks that there was on the inscription, but it does not contain information that most probably was never written on the inscription. Coming back to the TSS project and help with many epigraphers to understand what is an inscription, we were looking for conceptual tools to work with. There are some semantic systems, there are some evidence-based approach, there are some digital autoptic process, okay, we saw it, and they are working with primary sources of information that are providing evidences. There is the historical methodology to organize information, but I chose to work with the concept of Michel Foucault. I know I work with old concepts, but they are useful. That is the dispositive. And considering a dispositive means accept the idea to be in front of something that is not homogeneous. This is why the system is a little bit too tight, and maybe it's a little bit more adapted to humanistic data. So these are the criteria for a dispositive from Michel Foucault's point of view. It encompasses a thoroughly heterogeneous set of elements like shape of letters and a textual system and a very complex message that depends on iconographic information or symbolic information, as in the case of inscriptions. And it embraces a deliberate network of relationships among those heterogeneous elements. And this is what I asked to Federico to represent in his MarkOut, for instance. It was to link some heterogeneous elements, the textual one and the writing one. It emerges as a strategic answer to a community necessity. A dispositive exists or existed in relationship with and in reaction to its context. So it helps also to sync the digital edition of an inscription deeply rooted and deeply linked to its context. And it tends to force individuals to behave in a certain way, and this helps to understand that inscriptions are public writings and that they have an effect on on the cognition of people. But it tells you also how incomplete the observation of the epigraphic dispositive is. Some of its components are definitely lost or inaccessible. It helps also to focus on the nature and of the nature of the object. And from this approach, I find that it helps to take more in consideration the humanistic dimension of the cultural object that sometimes computer scientists make some difficulties to deal with. Okay, it's a strategy that is going beyond the concept of systems, and it's also an inscription is an interaction between who reads it and who decided to put the inscription where it is. So it makes some echoes to the element I showed you before. It aims to make the merging between the philological approach of the text in a digital way and the archaeological approach of the text-bearing object. So an inscription is a specific communication process, and this is how I try to drive the TSS project. Some consequences was the one you saw, so representing this heterogeneous network, between heterogeneous elements that would allow palographic statistics when all the LED tags will be tagged this way. But it also allowed to represent, in the case of the LED tag, the relationship between the textual and the external context of the inscription, and to have economic statistics that are always updated according to the LED tags that are in the DB. And the consequences from a technology point of view are the linking tool that are having a writing system. It's quite easy from a digital point of view. A contextual system would be, for instance, a 3D reconstitution of a scene. A textual system is linked to computational linguistics. But what makes the importance of the TSS project is to build some linking tools, like the MarkOut Federico has built, or harvesting simple economic information. We do thank you, and we thank our partners, and most of all we thank the students who accepted to test our tools. Thank you very much.